Okay, I'm starting early. I don't care. Why? Because I can. With me tonight, I hope, is Jen Just. Jen,
I'm here.
Can
you hear me?
Excellent. Yes, we can.
Awesome.
All right. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about a few things that have been impacting Connecticut politics of late. There was a visit by a certain vice presidential candidate. There was a little protest by seniors outside of McMahon headquarters. There was the fact that Senator McCain has now endorsed Linda McMahon. There's also the wonderful aspect of politics, particularly presidential politics, is not just related to Republicans or Democrats. There's actually more people on the ballot. And then,
There are.
And then there's the fact that the 5th General Assembly seat primary, like days of yore, Jen, you will actually remember this, Francisco Franco is still dead. Well, the primary is still alive. They're voting right now as we speak.
What do you think the odds are of it being split again?
Unfortunately, relatively high.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if all that special money coming in. Well, we'll talk about that later, right?
Yes, we will. Then there's a little egg on my face because I've been reporting all along that it was likely that the Supreme Court would rule in favor of the Secretary of State on who gets the top line.
Right.
I was wrong.
You were wrong.
7-0 wrong. Wow. And last but not least, if we have time, we'll touch base on how our deficit for 2013 seems to be growing.
Must we?
Well, we kind of sort of got it because it impacts a lot of things.
It does. It's just so sad.
I know, but, you know.
Unlike the Republicans who are comical. I'm sorry, but it's true.
Well, it appears
not that I'm biased at all.
No, not at all. It appears as though we have a spending problem that isn't really our fault.
No, or under our control, which is kind of scary. I
yes. Think. And the end result is that we could end up with a 30 plus or minus $4 million deficit. And that would have an impact on a lot of things, like, for instance, what we do with the busway, whether or not we appoint new judges. And right now there's a deficit of Superior Court judges by the tune of, 20 or so.
Really?
And within a month and a half, there will be one less Supreme Court justice. Mandatory retirement. Oops. So,
now, how does that work economically? I mean, doesn't it cost to have a backlog of cases or no? It costs less for that than to hire a judge, obviously.
Well, for one thing, you have a budgeted amount. So if you were expecting to carry 146 Superior Court judges, for example, and 2 die or retire or are otherwise no longer available, it would be possible for the governor to appoint 2 more to bring it up to the budgeted amount.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There are, my understanding is 23 vacancies, and the budgeted amount is something along the lines of about 6. So
wow.
He could reappoint or appoint 6 new ones and not run afoul of the budget. But he's also trying to save wherever he can.
Right.
Each judge costs about $250,000.
Wow.
A year. Okay.
Yeah.
So 6. Wow. You're saving $1.5 million right there by not filling that spot.
Who needs justice after all?
I do. I'm just saying.
Apparently justice is cheap. Or no, it's expensive, actually.
No,
Sorry.
justice is extremely expensive.
trying to sound witty and pithy, but
I know. But there is one case that I do have to talk about that is not in the packet of stuff that I sent. It was in the Hartford Courant this morning. Richard LaPlante is getting a new trial. Now, for those of you who don't know, Richard LaPlante has an IQ of about 82, barely functioning. Okay? He was accused of raping, then murdering his grandmother-in-law, okay, and then setting her apartment on fire. Her house. There is very little likelihood that a person with an 82 IQ could have done everything that he was accused of doing in the time frame that the state will end up having to play with as far as the second trial is concerned.
Right.
Something along the lines of about 15 minutes. Now, a person with a normal IQ would be hard-pressed to do all that in the amount of time that we're talking about. And the reason why LaPlante is getting a new trial, and this was after serving 23 years in our state prison system, is because the appellate court determined that the prosecution's failure to turn over a detective's set of notes was manifestly unfair, requiring a new trial.
Right.
This is the first time in 22 years, out of the 23 that he's been serving, that friends of Richard LaPlante and the defense team for Richard LaPlante have actually scored a victory. And when we talk about how justice is cheap or justice is expensive, I get the fact that we have some reason to joke about that. Here, however, is one instance where there has been justice delayed. And to quote Thurgood Marshall, justice delayed is justice denied.
Exactly.
And it is my hope that the state, through the prosecutorial offices, will decline to retry this man and will, in effect, exonerate him. It's been too long. Getting back to some more pithy things, we were visited by royalty, by Republican royalty, in the last 72 hours. We had Republican vice presidential candidate Representative Paul Ryan, Republican Wisconsin, who visited our state on September 30th, and we had Senator John McCain visiting our state yesterday, all in hopes of getting out the vote for Republicans, raising money for Republicans, and supporting Republican candidates. The thing is...
No, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I can't tell if it's because I'm paying more. Well, I paid attention 4 years ago, too, but it seems like it feels to me like they sense there's an opening or else they wouldn't be coming. I mean, I'm just trying to remember what Republicans came to the state 4 years ago. Of course, they all come to try to raise money, but this does seem like they sense that there's a weakness and they want to try to...
Except for one thing, the fundraising visit by Representative Ryan was not attended by any of the Republican candidates.
That was interesting, yes.
And in fact, the McMahon campaign went so far as to say, if she had some free time, we'd probably do something different. We wouldn't be visiting with Paul Ryan. She basically was doing anything and everything she could to distance herself from Paul Ryan on Sunday. What was really kind of amusing was apparently McCain's visit was more partisan than Ryan's visits. And she kind of got stuck, tagged with, the Republican tag, thanks to McCain's endorsement, which will probably hurt her more than if she had actually palled around with Paul Ryan.
That's interesting. That is interesting.
The
This is the
now
bind that Republicans are in Connecticut. We talked
absolutely,
about this last time.
and while both Rob Simmons and Chris Shays were present at the endorsement uh, gathering, and it was pretty obvious that they were trying to show the flag and say everything's better now. We had a nasty primary, but we're all friends again. Well, it was Simmons that actually introduced McCain, so you could really say that the hatchet was buried as far as Simmons was concerned, because he was taking an active role in the endorsement process for Linda McMahon.
Hmm.
The same could not be said for Representative Shays, who was lost somewhere in the midst of the audience. And there is actually in CT News Junkie's article, which was written by Hugh McQuaid, a picture of Shays. Really, you had to hunt and search for him because he was really in the midst of the crowd.
Oh, that's funny.
While the fundraisers in West Hartford and Fairfield County were successes, it is possible that the Democratic candidates in Connecticut got a bigger boost. Neither Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate, Linda McMahon, nor Republican candidate for 5th Congressional District State Senator Andrew Rohrabaugh attended any of the fundraisers. In fact, comments made by McMahon's campaign indicate that McMahon would have been unlikely to attend any function involving Representative Ryan. When asked if her schedule, the reason for missing the events, were to have hypothetically opened up, McMahon's campaign spokesman Todd Abrahano said McMahon would likely find another event in which she would have the opportunity to talk with voters and get her message out there. Read that to mean he's radioactive. I'm going nowhere near him.
Well, the interesting thing is, I mean, does Paul Ryan really care? He's just there for the cash, right?
Oh, yeah.
But
He
but
was,
it is. I mean, it's a dilemma for Connecticut Republicans. Again, I mean, this is the party that you're associated with. This is who you're going to be working with. So,
and both McMahon and Rohrabaugh have been touting their independence, have been running up the flag. We will buck our party when it's necessary. We will buck our party when it's right. We are independent thinkers. Apparently, McMahon in the endorsement party stated that she was an independent thinker twice when she was accepting the endorsement, and then referred to McCain as an independent thinker about 5 different times.
Right.
However, McCain was very clear that he was here to get out Republican votes. When he was speaking to the disabled American, let's find this here, the Disabled American Veterans Hall in Danbury, he pointed to McMahon's business experience and said that she would make a good partner in a Republican-controlled Senate. I think I need Linda as someone who will partner with me and others and President Romney in restoring our nation's prestige and strength, quote unquote. Any hope that Linda had to distance herself was pretty much shot with that
pretty
one.
much. Well, did you read it? It's slightly different. I mean, I read in the paper today that Republican donors, like the big-time donors, are actually fleeing Romney and giving money to the Senate and congressional campaigns.
Which is not a huge shock or surprise. What is also interesting is if you look at the 5th Congressional District, how much money is actually coming into Rohrabaugh from the National Party? I haven't seen much. I could be blind. I'm not omniscient. Can't see everything.
Yeah.
But from what I've seen, there have been no ads that have been put out by the National Republican Party in favor of Rohrabaugh. All of the ads that Rohrabaugh has put out have been his own. Now, it could well be that Rohrabaugh is telling the National Party, I don't want your ads.
That
It's
doesn't usually go over well with the National Party, though. They tend to do what they want to do, but
I understand that. However, they also desperately want this win. And a friend of mine pointed out this morning, Rohraback's greatest gift would have been for Donovan to have won the Democratic nomination. Once he didn't get that, he pretty much was really on his own, and he has not had a truly contested election for at least 3 election cycles.
yeah.
So he's kind of in unfamiliar territory at this point in time. And he's doing it without any visible national support. Now, whether that is of his own doing or not is up in the air. I think that you're right, Jen. You do that at your own peril. Not only, if you win, you then are assigned a basement office, like right next to the furnace in the Congress. And you pretty much are not heard from for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I've just never heard of it working that way. I've never ever heard of a candidate saying, "No, you can't come in." I mean, it's usually, "This is what we're doing. This is our national strategy, and you're part of the strategy, and this is what we're doing."
And I am purely speculating, but the speculation is based on the fact that we have thus far seen about 40% of Elizabeth Estes ads are now coming from the National Democrats.
Right.
Okay. And for a little while, it was almost 60% of her ads. Now she's started to gin up some of her own. So she's got more than half of her stuff out there at this point. You're not seeing that with Rohraback. All you're seeing is his own stuff.
Yeah.
And his own stuff ain't that much. He's
It is
had 2
interesting
or
because
3
you'd
ads.
think they would think they could win this race.
Oh, they knew that they could win this race. That was the conventional thinking.
Right.
That it didn't matter who the Democrats threw up there. This was now a contested seat.
Right.
And they're not acting like it is anymore. Which
exactly.
is perplexing.
It makes me wonder that maybe there are other seats out there that look like they're closer or something. Like maybe there's a calculation somewhere else about some other seat. I mean, they only have so much.
But none of the Connecticut Republicans are getting much national money because McMahon's turning it away. She wants to control her message.
Yeah.
And she's rich enough that she can do that. But really?
Now, I heard, did we talk about this at all? I heard a rumor, I don't remember where I read this, that, or maybe it wasn't even a rumor, maybe it was written down somewhere, that she was giving money to like DTCs and stuff and trying to influence local races.
I hadn't heard that. I would find that to be incredibly amusing if she was. Highly unlikely. Now, her husband could be donating stuff, but her being the Republican nominee for a fairly substantial position leads me to believe that she would not cross that particular river Rubicon. But, as proven by the Supreme Court, I've been wrong before. What was interesting about Ryan's visit, however, was that it allowed the Democratic contenders to really fine-tune some of their attacks against their opponents in a way that had not been really happening before.
Right.
For instance, there was the comment by Linda McMahon that had been made back in April of 2012 in front of a group that styled themselves as Tea Partiers, wherein she basically said that she thought that Social Security could be sunsetted. What she actually said was when they made that law, they should have put sunset provisions in there. And that if she was a part of the lawmaking, she would think that sunset provisions would be appropriate. Okay, that is about as clear as you can get to saying that if she's elected a senator for Connecticut, that she would be working on sunset provisions for Social Security and possibly Medicare, meaning revisiting this in 10 or 15 years. And if she doesn't like it, then she wouldn't vote for it.
Right.
Ergo, the law would then go away. That has got to have seniors fairly concerned. And in fact, there was a group of them that were concerned and visited her North Haven headquarters yesterday. And they were perhaps just a handful, but this could be the beginning of a groundswell that the Murphy campaign is trying to build on, based on how they were responding to the Ryan visit. A story by Christine Stewart and CT News Junkie. A handful of seniors not happy with McMahon's remarks on Social Security gathered their friends and brought some signs and a guitar to a protest outside of McMahon's North Haven headquarters yesterday. Neither McMahon nor her staff were there, as she was in Danbury with her staff getting the endorsement from Senator McCain. The comments that were upsetting to the seniors were these comments that were made by McMahon in April to a Tea Party gathering. Apparently, the comments were caught on video, kind of like the Romney 47% comments. And
kind of.
Yeah. And she said in this video, we cannot continue doing things the way we are doing with Social Security. We are just simply going to be bankrupt. And I do believe that there are ways to look at, what we're trying to do when we put Social Security in place. We didn't go back and review it. In other words, I believe in sunset provisions when we pass this kind of legislation, so that you take a look at it 10, 15 years down the road to make sure it'll still fund itself. End quote.
Right.
Those were her actual words.
Yep.
On the video. And that kind of upset some of the seniors. Said one of the organizers of the gathering, Marie Elia, Linda McMahon stands for getting rid of Social Security, believe, because that's what sunset means. A sunset means we will end it and think about doing it again. Well, Marie, it actually doesn't necessarily mean that. It does mean that you have a terminus point built into the legislation that says as of 2013, this will end unless we vote to extend it. That's how the usual sunset provision is drafted. Okay? It doesn't mean that, it'll end and then we might say, we'll bring it back. No. In order for the sunset provision to actually be working, it means that they have to vote to extend before the terminus point has been reached. Nonetheless, having a sunset provision in one of the two largest entitlement programs that the government runs has got to be scaring the bejesus out of seniors.
Yeah.
And it should. And one of the other protesters pointed out that Social Security doesn't just pay for seniors. Social Security pays also for the disabled. Social Security also pays for dependents of those who are disabled
or deceased.
Or who have died, exactly. So it is not just a handout for seniors.
It's not even a handout for seniors. I mean, for seniors who've lost their pensions and everything. I mean, Social Security is everything. I mean, it's.
And
I just hate the term entitlement. It's become, it makes it sound like people feel they're entitled to it, and that's not what it means.
and it has become a lightning rod and a boogeyman comment.
Right.
It's what scares people. When you hear entitlement, you think, oh gosh, welfare recipient, the welfare queen. Same kind of vitriolic response from those who are on the extremes, either left or right, when they hear that buzzword.
Yep. I think they should remove it from the lexicon personally, but
Well, we're going to actually do something responsible now and pay some bills. But we will be coming back to talking about, the libertarian and the independent candidates for president. The revote that is still happening, and we've already touched on the Supreme Court thing, so we don't have to really beat that one to death. And we'll talk about the budget. But
all right.
But we will be back momentarily. Stay tuned.
We're here for you right now. OnThehorn.com.
Budwitz and Meyerjack PC is a large Connecticut-based CPA firm with offices in Cheshire and Farmington, Connecticut. Large enough to handle engagements of enterprises with annual revenues in excess of $100 million, yet small enough to cater to smaller businesses and individual clients who expect personalized attention from partners and staff. Client service is the cornerstone of our practice. Our clients have a fixed fee for their audit and tax work. What this means to the client is we're approachable. Personal communication and client services make for strong relationships. Budwitz and Meyerjack, certified public accountants.
Sandits Travel for business and leisure. We'll take you there. Sandits Travel has been proudly serving Connecticut since 1960. That's over 50 years. And we're ready for another 50 years of superior service. Whether you prefer to come in, call in, or log on, we invite you to explore how efficient, diverse, and fun it is to book through Sandits Travel. Save your money and your time with us. Sandits Travel. We'll take you there.
You're listening to On the Horn, OnThehorn.com, and we're also brought to you by Deepwater Seafood of Avon. Have you been to the only fish market in Farmington Valley? Deepwater is located on Route 44 and is open 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. One of the best things about Deepwater is their fish are fresh. 3 deliveries daily to meet your needs. Deepwater has a menu of grilled fish items, scampi, fish and chips, soups, bisques, and chowders. For your catering needs, authentic paella. Really good stuff, guys. Cedar plank salmon sides, and always the traditional New England clam bake. Deepwater also has the very best shrimp cocktail that you'll find anywhere. Call in your order at 860-676-9657, and they'll have your order ready for pickup when you arrive. Deepwater Seafood of Avon, not just for the halibut. And we're also brought to you by CentralCTDental.com. Doctors Camp, Sambor, and Lupini for serious issues or routine checkups. Go nowhere else. Easy to get to on the Plainville-Farmington line. Call 860-747-5761 or make an appointment online at CentralCTDental.com. And we're back. So, Romney and Obama are not the only presidential candidates in Connecticut. Shocking.
Yes.
Shocking. There are two. Go ahead.
No, I have a friend who's a big deal libertarian in Texas, and he's just furious that Gary Johnson hasn't gotten more attention. He was part of the big deal at the convention, like me. And then he also decided to defend Ron Paul at the convention. But anyway, proceed.
Apparently, we have 2 third-party candidates on Connecticut's presidential ballot this year, and they are in the running to enact their bids nationwide. The Independent Party's presidential nominee is Ross C. Rocky Anderson, a former 2-term Democratic mayor of Salt Lake City. The Libertarian Party's presidential nominee is Gary Johnson, a former governor of New Mexico. Anderson, 59, a Utah native, is anti-war and would only go to war for moral security and or economic reasons rather than engage, quote, in illegal wars of aggression, end quote. He supports raising the minimum wage, legalizing marijuana, would confront the wealth and income disparity that exists in the United States, and would propose a constitutional amendment that would grant equal rights to all citizens of the United States, preventing discrimination against ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, or religion. Besides Connecticut, Anderson and his running mate, Luis Hernandez, are on the ballot in 15 other states: Colorado, Florida, Idaho, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, New Jersey, New Mexico, Oregon, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Utah, thank goodness, Vermont, and Washington. Now, just for giggles and ha-has, he doesn't have California. He doesn't have New York. And frankly, if you don't have those states, you ain't going to get elected.
They're not going to get elected anyway.
Well,
but
I understand that. But I'm just, from a strategic point of view, you're not going to have enough electoral votes to even tie things up.
Yeah.
Now, Johnson, a former two-term governor from New Mexico, nicknamed, quote, the most fiscally conservative governor, end quote, in the country, aggressively sought and obtained the necessary 7,500 petitioners' signatures that he needed to get on the Connecticut ballot. Johnson's platform focuses on efficient government, balanced budgets, rational drug policy reform, protection of civil liberties, comprehensive tax reform, and personal freedom. Yep, sounds like a libertarian. The only thing is, I don't know which other states he got onto.
Right.
Which leads me to believe there weren't many. Which leads me to believe, again, that it's not really a viable candidacy. Just saying. It should be noted that Johnson, while governor of New Mexico, eliminated a budget deficit, cut in half the rate of growth in state government, and privatized half of the state prisons. Now, this is according to his presidential website. It hasn't been fact-checked. But even if everything was true, let's remember, New Mexico, not the most populous state in the United States.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, we hardly even know about these candidates, and one of the reasons is because they haven't participated in the debates. And one question I have is, have they changed I mean, Ross Perot used to be able to be in the debates. I mean, why weren't these guys allowed to be in the debates? Because that would have given them the exposure they needed, maybe, to have a more viable race. And
it would have given them a certain cachet for, apparently the independent candidate is debating the libertarian candidate at the same time that the Obama-Romney debate is going on, and it will be televised on a Go Democratic Elections website.
And their families and friends will be watching.
Perhaps.
No, I just, it's interesting to me that, how can they have a viable candidacy unless they're on television and unless the networks or whoever is going to let them participate in those early debates? Then, I mean, it's impossible. You can't have a candidacy without participating.
One airwave, at least. Radio, TV, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're not there. And yes, one of the reasons is it's expensive.
No, but I mean, I'm for the debates.
I understand that.
To me, the network should have every single candidate on. I'm sorry if it's going to be 15 people, but to me, it's not fair. If someone has gotten, whatever it's needed to run for president, then they should be heard. And you can't be heard unless, I don't know. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, the problem there is viability. I mean, Ross Perot, as an example, had gotten on 48 of the 50 United States ballots. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why he didn't get the last two was apparently there was problems with signatures being verified.
Right.
He did try to put into play all 50 states. Okay.
But was that before he got onto the debates? Was he in the debates after he'd gotten all the signatures?
Yes.
Okay.
Because
Part of the question.
the date, the time frame that we're talking about, the debates were about 2 months to a month before the election.
Okay.
Okay. And in order to have qualified for the ballot for a majority of the states that he was shooting for, he had to have been on have gotten the signatures by March, April, May
Gotcha.
of
Okay.
that year.
Okay.
So it was pretty clear that he was making himself a viable candidate.
Yes.
That is not the case when you're on 16 out of 50.
Agreed.
And furthermore, when you're not on a state ballot that carries a bunch of electoral votes, Texas, Ohio, Pennsylvania are swing votes, swing states, but they don't necessarily have the highest, Texas is close, electoral vote counts. California, New York, both are huge
Yep.
in that contingent. And if they'd gotten on to California and New York, you could at least say, all right, they're trying to be serious. That's when the networks would probably say, okay, you can come on.
Right.
Because you at least can put things into contention.
Right.
Not so with our friends here, unfortunately. It sounds like Johnson would be an interesting guy to talk to. And
I gather.
Mayor Anderson definitely sounds like an interesting guy to talk to.
You mean Rocky? Yeah.
Rocky.
Absolutely. Anyone who has a nickname named Rocky.
Stepped into his room. Anyways.
Wouldn't that be great? President Rocky Anderson.
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat.
Again. That trick never works.
Nothing up the sleeve.
Oh, God, this is
Presto, a budget.
Boy, would that be handy.
No doubt about it. Definitely got to get me a new hat. So it is now 7:52, and the 5th General Assembly is still voting. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes?
Yeah, apparently. Leo Canty and Brenda McGee are participating in a court-ordered revote today for the Democratic primary for the 5th Assembly District, comprising of a portion of Hartford and Windsor, because the previous primary in August ended in a tie between the two candidates. A quick footnote, there were actually 3 candidates, but only the 2 top vote getters who tied are involved in this particular election.
Yeah.
There have been 2 recounts. There's today's court-ordered revote, and there is $40,000 that somehow has made its way in to supporting candidate McGee.
Now, here's something I don't... Did you hear that quote from him? That he
Yes,
said
I
the
did.
campaigns don't know who give to their campaigns? I didn't understand that.
His campaign chair said, we don't know what that money is being used for. We have no control over this. We don't know anything about it.
Okay, so it's...
Then
obviously.
McGee said, let's see, they're using me to get to him, referring to Canty, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that 4 days before an election, these people can just come out of nowhere and do what they want, and the candidate has no control over it. So McGee is basically distancing himself as far as humanly possible from the, and this was a quote from the Windsor Patch, I might add, from the organization that is known as the Greater New England Public School Alliance, which is a group that is affiliated with Michelle Rhee's Students First organization. Now, that is a conservative organization, Students First. They don't like school
Anti-union.
They don't like school unions. And that's why they're giving money to McGee. And that's why McGee is going, whoa, wait, no, stop. Really? I mean, stop it. Please, stop. 40,000, not a lot to sneeze at. That's more money than you would get using the public funding.
Yes.
So, all right. Being the objective person that I am. So anyways, the voting is going on. Who knows who's going to win? Canty is really upset about the money coming in at the last minute, but frankly, nobody knows where it's being spent. Phone banks? Really? Wow. Republicans get the top line. This, by the way, is my byline. In a unanimous decision, the Connecticut Supreme Court has ruled that the Republican Party will get the top line on the November 6, 2012 ballot in Connecticut. By a 7-0 vote, the state Supreme Court reversed a decision made by Secretary of State Denise Merrill in a lawsuit that bypassed the Superior Court and the Appellate Court. This was done because the parties agreed to the facts of the case, that Governor Daniel P. Malloy received approximately 20,000 votes less on the Democratic voting line than did Republican candidate Tom Foley, but that Malloy received over 25,000 votes on the Working People's Party line, which made Malloy governor by about 5,600 votes. The case was fast-tracked to the Supreme Court as elections are deemed to have a high priority, and court rules allow for such fast-tracking. The Supreme Court basically said sovereign immunity doesn't apply here. The Supreme Court said there is a justiciable issue, in other words, something for us to decide here. And no, because Malloy won doesn't mean that the Democrats get to be on the top line. Yes, because Foley got the most votes on one particular party line, the Republicans get to be the top line. Sigh.
So
I miscalled that. I'm sorry.
well,
It's one of the
it's
few times that
understandable.
I've done that. And last but not least, Connecticut deficit for 2013 created by Medicaid. This from our friends at CT News Junkie, Christine Stewart, the primary author. State Comptroller Kevin Lembo has certified a nearly $27 million deficit yesterday and warned that a slow economy on both the national and state level would continue to impact the state budget for 2013. Read that to mean, hey, it's about 30 down now. It could be more later. Lembo sent a letter to Governor Daniel P. Malloy stating that his office agrees with the Office of Policy and Management's current budgetary deficit projection that reflects a net loss of about $30 million from last month. The biggest culprit in the creation of the projected deficit is Medicaid. Quote, despite weak sales tax revenues, the state should reach its revenue targets due to a positive income tax trend and other factors. Our deficit projection is driven by the spending side, where the rising Medicaid caseload continues to grow and will likely run $100 million over budget, wrote Lembo in the letter. Medicaid added more than 1,700 additional clients in the month of August alone, a one-month increase of 0.7% and well above budget projections. The $100 million over budget will be offset by $50 million coming in from the federal government and $20 million in reduction of state debt service due to a lower than expected rates of borrowing, thereby leaving the $30 million shortfall. Lembo is also concerned about the sales tax trend in light of the fact that the slower personal income growth in the state as sales tax receipts have historically tracked personal income. Read that to mean we're going to have a slightly larger budget than we've got right now. Now, for those of you who have been following, and there are some of you, we were dealing with a $140 million budget deficit at the end of 2012, which I believe came down to 126 million at the end, which we then paid by not making payments to our deferred debt. Now we're looking at a new deficit because the old deficit has not been carried over. It's been paid off. Now it's a new deficit. And what the comptroller is saying is that we're not generating enough income, particularly from sales tax, to really offset the additional spending that we weren't counting on.
Right.
And that it's not because we are overspending ourselves. It's because a program that both the state and the federal government fund is taking on more cases than we had reason to expect. And I dare the Republicans to say that we should have anticipated 1,700 new cases for the month of August alone. I dare them.
Mm.
They probably will meet that dare. Nonetheless, that will have an impact on what we do going forward as far as our spending is concerned. And it will have an impact on services. It will have an impact on, as we were talking about before, the judicial branch. It will have an impact on some of the executive functions. So that's not good. On the other hand, we were dealing with a 1.1 billion, capital B, $billion deficit. And what the governor has done is turned it into a $126 million deficit at the end of 2012, and it's a $30 million deficit now. Gee,
yeah, instead of dealing like with what the president's dealing with, it's less bad than it was or could have been.
a lot less bad. A ton less bad.
I know, but if you look at his poll ratings and everything, you'd think that that was not true.
Well, that's partly because with the 1.1 billion, capital B, dollar deficit, we also had a $1 billion tax hike. That's never going to make you popular.
No.
And if you are squeezing the unions while you're, to gain concessions, that's not going to make you a fan favorite as far as unions are concerned. So I'm not shocked or surprised to see approval ratings in the 20s and the 30s. That's going to come around. It's going to come around come 2014 when Connecticut is in a situation where it is not floundering like some of our neighbors will be, because they didn't take the bit by the teeth and run with it. And they didn't make the hard decisions that we have made and that we are making. So I understand that it's a painful place to be, when your approval rating is like 23%. That's not good. But it's going to get a lot better in another year when we figured out that, well, let's put it this way. The housing market. We took a huge hit in 2007, 2008. We didn't recover. We still haven't really recovered. But we're not taking the hit right now that California, that Florida, that Texas is taking. And they have no safety net themselves. They're dealing with budget deficits. They're dealing with a real estate market that is crashing. It's not just, a recession. It's a real crash that these markets are going through. We're not dealing with that right now because we already bit the bullet. We've already taken the hit. Okay? Our real estate market hasn't recovered, but it isn't going down either. Okay?
Yep.
And interest rates are at historic lows. That's something that's one of the reasons why we were able to save $20 million, according to Comptroller Lembo. We're dealing with rates that we have not seen since the Depression. Wow. Okay. Connecticut is poised financially to take off when our economy finally turns around. The question will be, how do we get it to turn around sooner rather than later? How do we avoid one bad thing that we're dealing with? Unemployment rate of 9%. Okay, the national rate is 8.1%, which is not fantastic. 9%, really not good. And you are starting to see manufacturing jobs opening up. You are starting to see service-related jobs evening out, not necessarily opening up. The problem with the manufacturing jobs is that you also need to have people who are specially trained, whether it's high school, trade school, whatever. So while there are these openings in Connecticut, there aren't as many people as are necessary to fill them. Therein lies the rub. We need to do a bit more in education. We need to do a bit more in spurring continued growth. You're seeing that with the governor. You're seeing that with some of the new legislation. Perhaps, hopefully, we will see more in 2013.
Yes.
That is basically all we wrote today.
Stay tuned next week.
You've been listening to Dave Moore and Jen Just on News Talk Tonight. We are brought to you by Gateway Financial Partners, as well as CentralCTDental.com, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, Global Indemnity Insurance, Sandits Travel, Butwitz and Meyerjack CPAs, and Amazon.com. Tune in next week. We will have more news with more and Jen. Thanks for listening.
Just more.
Just more. I love it. You're listening to On the Horn. Tune in next week. See ya.
Bye-bye.